Okay, then let's begin, and I'm sure people will fill in. We'd like to welcome everybody to the December 16th Landmarks Commission meeting. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law in section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conduct its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you have your microphone on mute, use the raised hand feature before asking a question and making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute yourself for speaking. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raise hand icon again and muting your microphone. We'll be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website and email have been considered. We have also received email for those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to call the December 16th, 2021 Landmarks Commission meeting or Landmark Commission meeting to order. Don, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson. Ms. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Bonezzi.
Here.
Mr. Kalikia. Director Collier. Mr. Dreyer.
Here.
Councilman Jones. Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik.
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
We are also joined today by staff member Carl Brunges, who is hosting the meeting, and Kevin Roberts from the Department of Law. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. A little housekeeping to start us off, just to remind everyone that the facilitator controls your slides, so please announce when you'd like them to advance. We'll start with our concept plan review. We'd like to ask the applicants to use the raise hand function, unmute your mic, announce yourself, and you're welcome to start telling us about your project.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great, good morning. My name is Antonia Marinucci. I am the architect on this project representing my client, Laura Bidwell, for a new single-family home construction proposal at 1466 West 29th Street in Ohio City Historic District. A little background slash context. Historically, this was a single-family home lot. As you can see through the Sanborn mapping, it is immediately south of the transformer station for those who are familiar with that institution. So it's on West 29th Street, south of Detroit and Church Avenue, and north of Clinton and Franklin Avenue. There was a house there as recent as 2011 that was lost to a fire. So we're currently, if you can go to the next slide, please, Carl. Current context, directly across the street is the, I believe it's the firehouse, the Ohio City Firehouse, that now has Rising Star Coffee. We're in like the little Hingetown nook of the neighborhood. Looking north and then looking back south across the street is the Vibrating Company building, which I believe is currently vacant. Next slide. Looking at just more of the immediate context, the transformer station is the brick 1920s structure that you see to the right when we're facing the facility or facing the lot. Right now, it's kind of the current lot is a little bit of a park lot. The Bidwell, Fred and Laura Bidwell own the transformer station, and they also own this lot, which is a separate parcel. So its current use is a little park lot. It's private property, but they allow the public to enjoy it. Next slide, please. Looking again at that site, you can kind of see that there is an existing multifamily dwelling unit to the plan south that fronts Clinton. So the existing dwelling units that you see kind of to the plan left are fronting Clinton Avenue. So there's really no immediately like adjacent, residential frontage along this little strip. And then the right building to plan right is that transformer station. Next slide. So what we're proposing is a 1,365 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, single family home that is in like kind of the workman's cottage archetype of commonly seen throughout the neighborhood. Next slide. That's looking at the proposed front elevation in context to its neighboring properties. Again, the rear of that multifamily home, which has a large driveway and parking pad behind it, the proposed single family, as well as that transformer station. Next slide. Looking elevationally, Laura, my client, wanted to have something that would fit kind of just snugly right into the context of on the workman's cottage end of the neighborhood in terms of what we see, throughout. And with a little bit more of a kind of modern statement towards the rear, which just that rear west facade has a glass wall. It's completely not visible from the street front. So the north and south sides do get some visibility given the space between the proposed house and the existing structures. Next slide, please. From a materiality standpoint, we have taken this to Block Club twice, as well as to Ohio City Design Review for concept review. So we're going with just a earth tone palette, a sagey green for the body, an off-white for the trim, a plastic bronze on the roof and windows, standing seam aluminum roof on the entire structure, as well as just a natural wood front door and a slate gray timber tech like tongue and groove composite porching flooring on that front porch piece. Some of the feedback we had gotten from the committee on a previous iteration of the design was pertaining to the rhythm and size of the windows on this front facade, having a little bit larger or more windows on the second floor, which programmatically is a like art studio for Laura. And then also keeping the column style and porch style a little bit more modern and minimalist to help distinguish us from teetering into like the faux historic range. Is there any more? Carl, is that the last one? Oh, that's it. So that's where we're at. Since producing this presentation, Laura and I have also been exploring using like a true metal standing seam roof, potentially in like a zinc. I'm not sure if the committee has any feedback on that, just as a concept itself before we come back for final. But we thought that was a really interesting material that would patina over time.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We will begin with asking for feedback, asking regarding the feedback from the local committee.
Hi, good morning and happy early holidays to the commission and Madam Chair. This is Donna Gregonis, Neighborhood Development Director for Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West Development Corporations. So actually today I'd like to introduce a new colleague, Nate Lull. He will be working with us as well. and he will be on sometimes to provide the public or the comment from the local design review. Nate, are you on? I think he said he might be having issues, but maybe not.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good
Good
morning.
morning,
Nate.
Madam Chair and members of the board. Good morning, Donna. The commission generally supported this project. There were a few comments about softening the pitch of the porch roof, possibly putting a pediment over the door, and they suggested that the windows be a bronze color instead of the proposed black. And also on the second floor, there was talk of adding a second window or a larger window. And the last comment they made was to possibly modernize the columns on the front porch for a more sleek design.
Okay, thank you.
To avoid confusion, we've incorporated those changes already, and so that's what you see for this iteration of the design.
Excellent. Thank you for making sure we're aware of that. We will now open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Bailey?
I don't have any problem with the design other than the upper floor window. I heard that the presenter was mentioning the windows, the air studio. As far as proportion and the I think it would look a little better if it was like 2 separate windows versus one, just to make it coordination. That's my opinion. Not a larger window. And the same for the, what is that? The side south for the lower ones. If it's for each one, if it's like south. It's just having one large windows in each of those spaces. Maybe those just need to be looked at. Like, for example, like you have those 2 smaller windows up there. Those look nice and proportional. With the other ones, you just having they're so large. It's just don't look presentable. Whereas the ones on the lower front, they look nice and proportional. But then when you start adding those larger ones, it just looks like you just throw them in there. And could you explain the rear west? Are those all windows in the rear? I mean, what's the purpose of it? The owner just want more? Is that sort of like a sunroom? Is that what that is? A patio like?
Programmatically, the smaller windows that you see in the facade are in like where there's a kitchen counter, which is what you're seeing on this rear portion. The glassed-in area at the rear facade, yes, it's intended to be glass. There's going to be some structure, obviously, in there to support that structurally, but they wanted to have the rear massing is the kitchen, and they wanted to have it as almost like a greenhouse effect. There's still significant lot space behind the house, and they want to have a courtyard and garden back there and have a greenhouse feel at the rear. The windows that have higher sill plates are the ones that are in the kitchen, bathroom, and laundry room. So the larger windows that you're seeing are in the living spaces and or bedrooms. So we would be required to have larger windows by code. The studio space above is just an open loft. So the windows are matching like a standard 2-foot sill height and 6'8" head height on that front facade. It's not program as bedroom space. It's just meant to be like a little home art studio for the owner. And it's also
Okay.
it's a clipped, it's a story and a half. So you know, you can imagine and plan the 3 feet from both of those gable sides are going to be a clipped roof. It's not going to be a full second floor. And I'll be sure to
Thanks
put
for
a
the
picture.
explanation.
Mhm.
But the front east, I'm looking at having two separate, in my opinion, just two separate window, and I feel at least that blends in with the bottom. Everything will look proportional. That's just my opinion on that one.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Bonazzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, my question was going to be that top window, and I know that I am thinking about it being a loft space, and maybe the other solution is instead of adding another window, would you ever consider like shaker style shutters? Because I feel like the window feels so unadorned, or just feels so plain up at the top that it's kind of like throwing the total composition of the facade. At first thought I had the same intuition. I was like, well, if we add another window, but then I was thinking like they're going to get really close to the sides where the pitch of the roof is. But then I thought to myself, well, what is missing from this window? And I think it might be shaker shutters. I'm not sure, but I definitely think that window is something to think about. The other thing, did you say you already lowered the pitch of the porch overhang? You said what's presented is a lowered pitch. I believe I'm reading it's 5/12.
Yeah, originally it was a little bit steeper, so you saw more standing seam from
Yeah,
that front facade, and we lowered it
and
to the 512 pitch.
I truly think 5/12 is good. I think elevations always lie when it comes to pitches because the most subtle of pitch can look enormous in an elevation at times. So I don't have a problem with the pitch. I'm happy that that got lowered. I think the only thing for me is just this front window. But otherwise, it's a really, really cute house that is also with great colors. So I'm excited about that
I
once we
will.
figure out this window.
Thank you. I am more than happy to take the shutter idea to Laura. I'm just curious because we are trying to not teeter into faux historic, if that might be a concern, adding some like non-functional ornamentation in that sense. Like I think on my
Agreed.
first go, will probably just be to separate those windows and play with the proportion in relation to the roof line, so that just looks a little less centrally concentrated. But that's my only worry with the shutter. And not that I'm
No,
opposed to it. It's just, are we then teetering too far?
no, and I like I always say, more options is better than less. So if you're willing to like try separating them and see how that looks, and if you separate them and you say, oh no, this looks ridiculous separated, then it's like, well, what's the other answer? I think that could be another answer, but it's always better to have more tricks up your sleeve. So, but other than that, those are my only comments. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two comments. I agree. I think that upper windows is lacking something, and I was thinking, maybe separating them or maybe some more interesting trim on it. I'm not really too worried about putting on shutters and mimicking, some throwback era. I think sometimes we're a little too restrained on ornamentation. I think there's nothing wrong with well applied ornamentation. My second comment, it's not really a design comment, it's more of a suggestion. My experience, or our experience, has been in the real estate industry that one bedroom houses are really tough when it comes to trying to get appraisal values, because the appraisers have to compare the homes to other one bedroom houses that have sold. And there are a few, but they're not very many, and they don't often come on the market. so you don't have that comparison required to establish the value. So my suggestion is, I don't know if there's a way to create a, an 80 square foot office or something that you could call a second bedroom. I just think it'll eliminate a lot of headaches in the future if you do that. So those are my
That's a great suggestion. I think that as long as we can provide at least one egress window into that studio loft space, that could qualify as the second bedroom. I'm not sure that my client has appraisal concerns with this property in terms of their financing of the property, but certainly future, use and potential resale far down the line might be a great consideration for that.
Right. They may not have a concern, but the subsequent buyer of this house, might be decades down the road, but still at some point they're going to sell it. And it's been an issue, as long as I can remember, and I've been around for a while. The standards for bedrooms, they have to be kind of private. They have to have a window. They have to be a minimum of, I think, 80 square feet. So that's my comments on that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I don't see any other hands, so I'll just insert my comments now. I mean, I think it's a very tasteful design. I think you've really tried to respect the vernacular of the workers' cottage. And just doing a quick jumping online, just to remind myself of the workers' cottage vernacular. The double window doesn't bother me. I think it's the size of it. The typical vernacular, which would have a double window there, is smaller typically and not the same size as what you have on the first floor. Or it is the same size window from the first floor, but just a singular one, like that central window carried up. So I think if you continue to work on that one window, it just would strengthen design. And I think the simplicity of very minimal adornment and sort of which you currently have aligns with your current, the historical design. I like the colors, the roof though, and the dominant bronze color from the front elevation. If you did take that to a zinc, seems like it would, like you mentioned, patina very nicely and or soften. Like Mr. Bonezzi said, I think renderings are an asset and can also be a detriment because they don't always tell the truth of what the human eye will actually see. But if you are considering that, I think that could be a great addition to this design. Those are my comments. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that I saw a note that a variance is required for on-premise parking, and I wondered if the applicant had a solution for that to support that variance request.
The variance request would be that we aren't providing an off-street parking space for a single-family residence. To do so, we'd have to provide a curb cut on West 29th Street, which there was historically, but my client does not desire an off-street parking space, so we're kind of netting out in that we would be taking away a street parking space to create a curb cut, whereas here we don't need one. And also Laura's primary residence is in the Spaces Gallery, which is about half a block away, so she herself isn't concerned about parking because she won't be driving there.
Okay, so you have an alternate parking solution rather than just on-street parking?
There's not an alternate. The client who's building this house does not have the need for the parking space, but that doesn't mean that any owner at any point wouldn't have the need for a parking space. It's just that we are choosing to not remove a street parking space on an area that is in high demand for street parking in order to create the curb cut when it's not desirable for the client.
Okay, I'm not sure,
Go ahead.
how the zoning board is going to evaluate that variance request if you don't have alternate parking arrangements, but they might accept the fact that just on-street parking is considered as a solution. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Strickland. Any additional questions?
Quick comment, Madam Chair. You know, probably for marketability, you probably want some off-street parking. You know, I think a lot of people like to embrace the idea that, you know, everybody's going to give up cars in 15 years. I don't necessarily see that we should assume that's going to be the case, and having off-street parking, you know, just like having that second bedroom is going to make it easier to market somewhere down the line. If, you know, that's, of course, at some point somebody's going to have to sell the house. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Ms. Bailey?
Is there any landscaping on this site?
There is currently landscaping. Majority of the trees on the property are going to be retained. And there are, I think, 3 maple trees towards the front of the property that will need to be removed in order to construct anything. But the lot has, I think, another 3 maples as well as a like small grove of birch trees that would line the rear of the property. And then you can see that there is a like a gravel and shrubbery bed that hugs the transformer station that will be retained between the properties. We're choosing to align the property a little bit more to the south so that we can maintain kind of a retention area between the new construction and the transformer station for stormwater diversion.
And I'm assuming you'll bring that landscape plan with you when you come back for your certificate of appropriateness, correct?
Yes.
That would be wonderful. Other questions or comments from the commission? No, not seeing any other hands. Ms. Marinucci, do you feel you've received enough feedback from the commission to continue the development of your design?
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. We look forward to seeing you come back here in the near future. That concludes our concept plan review. We'll now move on to our certificates of appropriateness. We'll begin with our first applicant located at the excuse me, Detroit Chateau, located at 7916-22 Detroit Avenue. Could the applicant please use the raised hand function and announce yourself and tell us about your project? But before we go there, Mr. Pettit has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind the commission and a note on the agenda. Items 2 and 3 are actually both the same project. We originally saw the concept plan in August of 2020. At that time, we approved the demolition of the Detroit Chateau building. We have not yet acted on the demolition of the Walls branch. We also saw an update to the concept this past September. So we're here today to renew the action on the Detroit Chateau building and to take action on the Walls branch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pettit. We'll move on to Ms. Colsar.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Don, for giving all the information I was just going to say about this. So right now we are here just to talk about the certificate of appropriateness for demolition. Brittany Sanger from the Northwest Neighborhoods team will be presenting. For sake of time, I will let everyone know that this presentation is not really much different. Nothing has really changed in our argument for demolition since we presented this. So if for sake of time you'd like us to skip over some of this, please let us know. And Brittany will kind of take it from here.
So before we begin, just to clarify, so are you seeking approval of the design or you're not seeking approval. So the first, I'm just, okay, so both of these are for demolition only, and basically it's concept that we're just continuing to see. Okay, thank you.
And we hope right now to plan to come back for a certificate of appropriateness for the design. It likely will be in late January, early February.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't understand the first time you said that. You said it loud and clear. The second time. Thank you. Mr. Pettit, before they begin, you had something else to add?
Sorry, I meant to lower my hand and not to raise it again.
Oh, okay. And Ms. Coulthard, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. As Anya mentioned, we are here today to discuss the demolition of the Detroit Chateau and the Walls branch. Just a little bit of a refresher. This project is a joint venture between Northwest Neighborhoods and Cleveland Public Library to build 51 units of senior housing and a new Walls branch of the library. Next slide. The senior living will have 51 units, a mixture of 4 studios, 27 one-bedrooms, and 22 bedrooms, dedicated to seniors making between 30 and 60% of AMI. And the new Walls branch will include 24-hour book pickup and drop-off, after-hours meeting room spaces, maker spaces, etc. Next slide. So as mentioned before, we did receive prior demolition approval for, I think it was both structures in my recollection, but I could have been wrong. But we did definitely get it for the Detroit Chateau, which is an existing 19-unit affordable housing structure on the corner of West 80th and Detroit. And immediately to the east is the current Walls branch of the library. Next slide. So both structures are no longer serving the community to their highest and best use. The Detroit Chateau has really been a struggling asset for us due to some really unmarketable unit layouts and over $1 million in critical capital needs. And the Walls branch of the library has some significant accessibility issues that really prevent residents from being able to fully participate in the library's programs and services. And it also has some critical capital needs as well. Next slide. The Detroit Chateau was built in 1920 and we acquired it in 1991, doing a moderate rehab in 1998. We did attempt to get this building on the National Register in 2013 as an avenue to try to rehab this building, but SHPO determined that it did not possess significant historical or architectural character. It does have over $1 million in capital needs, and it's really just been leaking a lot of cash that's being subsidized by Northwest Neighborhoods over the last few years. Currently, the building is completely vacant and all of the former residents have been relocated. Next slide. Here are some photos of the current conditions of the Detroit Chateau, some exterior photos showing the front as well as some pavement cracking in the back parking lot. Next slide. Here are some interior current condition photos.
Madam Chair, this is Bob Strickland. We've already approved demolition of this structure. So I would say we could just skip this portion of the presentation if all my fellow commissioners agree.
So moving on to the Walls branch. This branch was built in 1967. And as mentioned before, so this building has a lot of accessibility issues because it's built into the side of a hill. So the restrooms can only be accessed if a person goes outside, down the parking ramp, and in through the back of the building. So the library really identified through their community vision plan and facilities master plan that this branch really needs to be redone to eliminate those challenges. Next slide. Here are some photos of the current conditions of the Walls branch. Next slide. This slide shows the Sanborn map. Next slide. Here's an aerial view of the project site. So again, we're looking at right on the corner of Detroit Avenue and West 80th. Next slide. An additional aerial photo of the project site. Next slide. some site context photos of the project site from the north, east, and west. Next slide. Additional site context photos showing some structures in the immediate area of the project site. I believe for those who were at the site visit last year, you should remember some of these structures. Next slide. Another aerial of the project site. Next slide. All right, this slide shows the current site plan. Again, the senior housing is going to be 51 units, 55,000 square feet, and the library will be 10,300 square feet with 33 parking spaces. Next slide. Here's a massing diagram of the proposed future building. Next slide. And the colorations on this slide show the differentiation between the library and the senior housing. Next slide. Here's a rendering of the current proposed new building. Next slide. And just a little bit on the timeline for this. So we are not, if approved, we would not be demolishing the Detroit Chateau until after our environmental review is complete with the city, which at this point in time isn't until likely February. And the library, if approved, would be staying open as long as possible until our construction start date in next June. So the two demolition timelines would not be happening at the same time. That's all we have.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. We'll begin with asking for feedback from the local design review committee. Carl?
Madam Chair, I was in attendance and both demolitions were approved unanimously by the local committee.
Thank you, Mr. Brunges. We'll move on to then questions and comments from the commission. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we have seen this project multiple times. I think it's going to be a tremendous asset to the community, having the new fully accessible library and then providing critically needed senior housing in this neighborhood. So I'm in favor of the demolition of the existing library.
Excellent. Thank you for that feedback. Other questions or comments from the commission? I will echo what you said, Mr. Strickland. I think as you've discussed when we've seen this in the past, I think this will be a great addition, to the neighborhood and much needed, sort of anchor facility in the area also. So I support the demolition of the library and support the demolition of the senior housing. Other questions or comments from the commission, or someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Strickland?
Sure. I'll put forth the motion to approve the demolition of the existing library branch on this site.
And we'll act on these separately, so we'll stay on the library branch. And Ms. Bailey, could you repeat your comment? You second?
Oh, I was going to second.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trout.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay,
By
thank
the way,
you.
this is John Carlo. I'm present.
Thank you. I missed you at the beginning.
That's okay.
What's your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Now it's unanimous.
Thank you. Mr. Brunges, you did have your hand up?
I did. Because it's been over a year since the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the Detroit Chateau, we will have to renew that one as well. So we would need a motion for that.
Excellent. I was going to get there next, so thank you for the reminder for everyone. Mr. Benezzi?
Thank you for the verbiage, Carl. I put forward a motion to renew the demolition for the Detroit Chateau as presented.
Thank you for the motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
I think that was Mr. Dreyer. Did you initially, and then Ms. Bailey also?
Yeah, Ms. Bailey.
The motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Miss Anderson,
Yes.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you return with a final design for the development.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll now move on to our reports. Mr. Pettit or Mr. Brunges?
Madam Chair, I just want to point out that this is just a report today. We're not going to take any action. I do think we should give feedback on the various options. We've been working for several months with the Division of Engineering and Construction to come up with a solution for the Hessler Wood Court block pavement, which is in serious need of repair and restoration. You know, and they've worked a lot at looking at various options for repairing the street. And Frank Keel is here from the Division of Engineering and Construction to report on the work they've done and to present their preferred option to us.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Keel.
Good morning. The Office of Capital Projects that I work for, we do highway projects in our engineering construction division, major highway projects. And we also assist Department of Streets in maintaining all of the residential streets. There's a residential resurfacing program that DOS does, but they cannot do all the work. So half of the work is farmed out to contractors, and the Division of Engineering oversees the contractors that assist DOS. This road came about from a councilman saying that there was some issues with the pavement condition. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see that the wood road is not looking great. There's cracks, there's missing bricks, there's it's swelled and heaved and curled. And at first we were just, DOS was just looking at repairing the road. And we had anticipated that if, you know, just doing a minimal repair, that probably about 50% of the wood would absolutely need to be replaced. As a matter of fact, this photo is a little bit old and it's even worse condition than it is in this photo right now. So Hessler Court is in the University Circle area off of Ford, just north of Euclid and Mayfield. And it's on the National Register of Historic Places. It was built in 1920-ish as a wood road, which there used to be a lot of wood roads back in the old days. But since then, there are only 5 that we are aware of in the country. And this is one of them. This is a one-way court with on-street parking allowed, and it's approximately 300 feet long by 18 feet wide, and the Landmarks Commission had dedicated this as in November of 1975 as a city historic structure. The National Register was even before that. So, you know, some of the cities around, they have like put asphalt over them, and they've some of them they replaced with, you know, bricks. And so we were just going to replace all of this with bricks at one point, or resurface it. But then, you know, we started looking at it. The wood bricks that are out there they're tight joint, full size, 3.5 by 7.5 by 3.5 inch thick southern pine soaked in creosote, glued onto the existing concrete base. Concrete base under the wood pavers appears to be in excellent condition. Approximately half of the wood pavers are deteriorated to a point where they're not salvageable. The remaining half are old and in various degrees of deterioration. Capital Projects studied this, and it was discovered there was a lack of a drainage system for these wood pavers. The wood pavers just sit on top of concrete, and so there's water seeps down into it, and they originally were glued onto the concrete, and the water seepage down in there loosened them up, and now when it rains, the whole wood road floats. So and yeah, as you can see, the wood continues to swell and crack, and the moisture is just tears it up. And the tight fitting joints don't allow for expansion of the wood pavers. Consequently, that shortens the service life of these, and just makes it difficult to keep this up. So we actually started with, you know, a couple options, like I said, and we actually ended up looking at 8 different options. And the first option, of course, was to just repair the road. That was going to be expensive. It was going to be a lot of money just to repair it. So we started looking at it and said, geez, even if we repair it, we're going to have a lot of old wood in there. So let's look at replacing all of the wood with new wood. Well, we talked to the original supplier, and they don't make those bricks anymore out of pine. So we started looking at some other options for replacing all of the bricks. So if you skip down to, I'll say page 16. This report was prepared for the mayor's office. So, you know, the exhibits I have here include all the text. So I'm not going to show all of that. Continue on down. More. Okay. Here is an existing Chicago alley that was recently redone. The ones in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, they have not been renovated. Like I said, some of them have asphalt over the top of them, and some of them are in disrepair and need to do something. That's how this Chicago one was. Well, they in Chicago decided that they would repave the road with wood, and they used Black Locust wood pavers. If you go down to the next page, you'll see that the Black Locust is a product that is readily available, and it happens to be a product that has a service life over 50 years. You can go to the next slide. It's sustainable as a renewable raw material, and it's ecologically it's as good as many of the tropical woods that are not sustainable. So Black Locust is something that's used around a lot for parks, paving in parks and things like that. Obviously, this is not a park, but if you go to the next slide, you can see here's some of the things that I was talking about. Maintenance is low. Next slide. Strength is high. Next slide. As you can see, there's on the lower right hand corner, these pavers can take heavy loads, and our particular road has a 9-inch concrete base underneath it. So as long as the wood can hold up to the loads, the whole road is going to hold up well. So next slide. So because of the problems that we've had with the original design, we started looking at what can we do to make this thing work better. And so we looked at this product. It's called Romex Grout. And this Romex Grout is permeable. So the water can actually flow through the grout into what we'd like to do is create a drainage system. We want to drill holes into the concrete curb and concrete base pavement so that the water can escape and eliminate this problem with the floating blocks. We definitely don't want to use the creosote and the tar that was used originally to glue these blocks onto the concrete. So this Romex is a product that we believe is something that we should invest in to make sure that we don't have to go back to this road for a very long time to replace it again. And so you can go to the next slide, I guess. Oh, that might be it. Let's see. I thought there was one more. No, that was it. Okay. So, but you know, if you go back one slide, go back one slide, please. Another slide, back a lot of slides. There. You'll see that the product that they sell these days is more like patio blocks. It's 4x4 rather than 4x8. So one of the options we looked at was 4x4. And we said, well, that doesn't really go with the character of the original. And so what we thought we'd do was take 2 of these wood blocks and not have a joint in between 2 of the wood blocks so that they would appear to look like a 4x8 brick, and then have the Romex grout around those 4x8 patterned blocks. And that would give the original appearance, and we would use the staggering bond that is originally out there right now, so that the character in that way would also be maintained. So we looked at, one of the options was having the Department of Streets do this, but we felt that they did not have the manpower or expertise to do this work. And the cost was not significantly better, even if we did have them do it. So we're probably we're gonna hire a contractor. The Chief Brown had approved in concept this project, and a decision memo has been written to the administration requesting the money for 560. I think we asked for over 650,000, I believe, to get this done. If this was done back 30 years ago, it would have been like 60,000, but now it's 600,000 to do this work. So it's amazing how much things have changed money-wise on this. We can do a regular street for 60,000, and this is going to cost 600,000. So, we're trying to maintain the character of this road and maintain the status as a place of historic notability. So with that, I will ask what comments you may have.
Thank you for the presentation on what your plan is for this area. I will ask Mr. Pettit, is there anyone in attendance that we need to hear from before we open the floor to the commission?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to let the commission know that we invited 2 members of the Hessler Road Neighborhood Association to the meeting today. I believe Janice Cogger and Laura Siraki are here. We've also invited Elise Yablonsky from University Circle Incorporated to the meeting. One thing I just want to point out, and Frank, if you can clarify this, the court has already been repaired. It's already been repaired temporarily. Is that correct?
Well, there's some potholes, so we had to use whatever we could to repair it, and that was using bricks for the potholes, regular masonry bricks.
And thank you. And the assumption is that this work would be done in the spring. That's correct, assuming you get the funding.
We have, I believe we will have. Well, I can't say we definitely get the funding, because there's going to be a change of administration. I know the neighborhood is for it, the councilman's for it, our Department of Streets is for it. I'm sure Landmarks would be for it. It's just a matter of if we get the money or not. That's one thing. The other thing is working for the city of Cleveland, we have a fairly laborious process of getting from, yeah, we have the money, to the point where there's actually somebody digging in the road. So I would tend to think that it would be more towards the middle of summer that we're looking at, if things go well.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. Pettit?
Yes, thank you. I think we should open up to the commission and to the members of the neighborhood.
Okay, we'll start with the commission for feedback. Mr. Strickland, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for the DOS representative. Have you done core samples to determine the permeability of the subbase below the concrete to make sure that there's going to be sufficient drainage by just drilling holes in the base and the curb?
No, we have not done any cores. It's typical when there's a 9-inch base that there's a 6-inch sub base underneath with an underdrain system. I don't know of any roads that don't have that, but we can do some cores.
I just want to make sure that drilling those holes are sufficient and just doesn't add to additional ponding to make sure that that water will evacuate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can take a look at that and make sure that'll work. It can't be any worse than it already is. That's how we feel.
Yeah, investing those kind of monies, I'm sure you want to make sure that the drainage does indeed work properly. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Ms. Anderson?
Actually, that might be me, Giancarlo. I have.
I think it's Ms. Anderson, but
Yes, go ahead, Giancarlo. If you want to go ahead, by all means.
I guess on my screen, I have you for me sometimes. Remember when we did that at the beginning? But go ahead,
Yes.
Michelle, please. I'll go after you. Michelle, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize that I was remiss. I was not able to really study. I think you had 8 different proposals for how to remedy the deterioration and replace these blocks. I noticed in a couple of the proposals they were going to use, I think it was white oak, which from what I experienced with oak, it's at least in this climate, it's not really a suitable wood for outdoor use. The moisture causes oak to turn black and deteriorate really quickly. So I'm kind of glad that we're leaning away from that, but
Yeah, we talked to some lumber yards, and that would seem to be the product that they were pushing. But they want to make a sale. They didn't have the black locust. This black locust is not a local lumber product. It has to be shipped in.
That's interesting.
Not too far.
Yeah, because we have lots of black locust trees.
I have them in my yard.
I do too. But yeah, I mean, they're going to sell.
And it's a really hard wood.
Okay, that's good because they're going to sell a lot of white oak because it deteriorates rather quickly.
Yeah, and it was actually more expensive. That was one of the rulings out that we did. We could, because the cost was more expensive than the black locust. And that's why Chicago chose black locust too.
Yeah, that makes sense because the Eco Village used oak for an exterior porch when they first built those in 2003, and somebody did a beautiful custom work building that porch with curved railings. They did a magnificent job, and I remember going to the ribbon cutting and being like, in shock that they used oak. And sure enough, within a very short period of time, that all had to be replaced. So that was my one comment. I think given the amount of traffic and some of the weight of the vehicles, some of those blocks that were proposed were thinner. I don't exactly remember the dimension, but I think a thicker block, something similar to what's there now, is probably the way to go.
No, not really, because let me comment on that, because there's 9 inches of concrete pavement is the base, and that base is strong enough without any wood on it whatsoever to carry the heavy traffic. So putting the wood on it a little bit thinner isn't going to hurt, and that additional thickness that is lost is where we're going to put the drainage layer underneath so that the water can get over to the edge of the road and out of out of there. So that's why we chose the 2 1/4 inch thick rather than the 3 1/2 inch thick.
Okay, I hope you're right. My last question,
I've been a highway engineer for 50 years,
okay, all right, and I'm not, so I'll defer to you.
but I'm retiring, so you can't go back on me on that one.
My last comment is some of this deterioration was caused by, expansion and contraction. Will the reapplication require expansion joints, or
That's what these joints are. These are permeable, flexible joints that
okay?
this mortar becomes.
Okay, so not only are they permeable, but they expand and contract with the seasons.
Yes,
Okay,
this is a specialized product.
interesting. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it should be something that we can watch and perhaps expand the use of this over the city.
And maybe they can restore other wood roads that had been replaced with asphalt and concrete.
Well, there's a lot of people that want permeable roads these
Mhm.
days, and permeable roads are something that our city has not accepted as a policy that we're willing to take on, because there's a maintenance concern with if you put gravel in between the joints, then plants grow up in them and they get clogged and they don't work after a while. So that's where this flexible permeable grout is. It shines because their plants can't grow in it, and it won't get clogged, because if these permeable pavements get clogged, they require extensive, very costly maintenance using special equipment to clean the joints out. And it's just something that the city has really balked on when developers have proposed these things for some of their areas.
Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to introduce permeable pavers. It's a much greener solution than having the runoff.
Well, I can tell you that Department of Streets who has to maintain it says we don't want them.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
understandable.
so maybe this is something that this can be expanded. This Romex solution could be expanded because of the lower maintenance capabilities.
Excellent. Ms. Anderson, any additional questions?
No, that should do it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Giancarlo, you had some questions yourself?
Yes, thank you. One is I'd like to say that when I was deep plowing for my vineyard in Madison, Ohio, we found large chunks of black locust that had been probably buried for 50, 60 years. And except for about a ½ inch of rot around the edges, it was perfectly hard, and I've carved about 20 or 30 pieces. It's an amazing, highly resistant wood. So that's
sure is.
choice for it. And Ohio has we have some very large mills in eastern Ohio that actually process it. But one of my comments was, that these streets, and we have many in Cleveland that were paved in brick. They were designed for the water to drain over the street. There was no really system for drainage. That you didn't find any drainage systems for this particular street, did you, when you were doing your research?
No, typically if you have a concrete base under there, there's going to be a layer of gravel underneath the concrete base with under drains on each side.
Yeah.
But we have not investigated that to be sure of that. And
So
that's
it's actually
one of the comments was that we should look a little bit further.
Well, they were designed
what we're talking about is going to work.
Correct. I think just like the famous Roman roads, they were designed for water to drain through and not to actually penetrate. The penetration takes place after many years of use and neglect. I think, for example, railroad ties were made of oak forever, but they were designed to kind of support systems of weight. And so this particular street was originally designed that every so often these pieces of wood would be replaced. So one of the historical issues that we have as far as conservation is that there never was, because the technology changed, we went into paving, everybody became obsessed with asphalt as the cure to all problems. So a period was skipped where some of these blocks of wood would be replaced after 20 or 30 years. So there's a regular maintenance program, which we no longer have. So now we're faced with a street that should have been replaced, partially replaced 15, 20, 30 years ago, but it has not. So every problem that you have mentioned, and you've done an amazing job of researching this. As an aside, I saw that street in Chicago because I like the whole idea of wood pavers and things like that. So, you know, it would be a great project, obviously, to replace it. One comment that I have is it possible to replace some of the blocks with new Black Locust blocks? Would that be an idea that could be considered without?
If you go back to the first slide or second slide, you can see the condition that the remaining blocks are in.
Right.
They're curled, they're cracked, they could be salvageable, but do you really want to salvage them? I mean, they're not in that great a condition, and we're talking about a lot of money just to repair the road. So if we and that doesn't eliminate the problem of the blocks floating when it rains real hard.
When you say floating, the water just sits on the surface and it doesn't drain?
No, the water goes down to the bottom of the concrete.
Okay. So that whole.
And then the wood blocks float up.
Yeah. Okay. I have a building on East 55th Street that has about 8,000 square feet of 6 by 6 by 6 cubes of white oak that's been soaked in creosote, and areas where there's the slightest leak from the roof, where the building is over 100 years old, they've just bulged upwards. So that water situation is the same. But the floors, I think these pavers and these streets were designed for the water to float over them, not to penetrate.
Well, I don't think that's possible. How do you seal those?
Well, now it's no longer possible because the whole system has been violated. Exactly.
Well, I mean, even when it's brand new, you still got cracks.
Yeah. So
and the cracks, the water will go in the cracks. Water doesn't need much width to go in the cracks.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you think is the best method then to deal with this situation, with this replacing this historical street with a historical
with Black Locust and using the permeable flexible joint surrounding the staggered bond pattern that has the appearance of the original.
And removing all the current blocks.
Removing all the current blocks. We can save the old blocks for repairs if we need them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a great.
And I think we're going to buy more. We're going to buy like an additional 20% too for stockpiling of
So
Black Locust.
Just roughly, what percentage of the current blocks you think are salvageable and reusable?
Well, like I say, you know, we could possibly use as much as 50% of it, but probably when we go to take them out, we might find that it isn't even that high.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It's just a very impressive project, and I'm so glad that you've done so much research. That's quite amazing. Very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Ms. Yablonsky.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thanks for the opportunity just to provide comment. I just wanted to echo again the thanks. We've just been long advocating with City Planning and Landmarks Commission, the councilwomen neighbors for attention to the fabric of the street, and it's just really exciting to see the level of detail that went into studying it and trying to replace it in an appropriate manner. I further appreciate the effort to try to maintain the profile as much as possible with the best surface that you've identified. Do you know whether any products have or any other projects have done the profile that you're suggesting where there's not a joint in between it? I'm just wondering whether that creates any issues or for the bricks itself, like if they want kind of borders around them. Is that something that you've studied or looked into, or just don't think is going to be an issue at all, having them right next to each other to create that sense of the existing profile?
Have not looked into it, didn't feel a need to look into it, don't have a concern about it.
Okay.
The expansion and contraction and the permeability of the other joints will allow the water to penetrate to the concrete base and then drain out the drainage system in the permeable flexible grout system. It's a significant improvement over not having any.
Sure. No,
drainage
absolutely.
system.
Was just curious again if that had been done elsewhere, where you had any precedent for.
This is a pretty unique project.
Yes, I know, 1 of 3 in the country, right? We're really lucky to have it here in Cleveland. To the questions about the salvageable bricks, I just was still a little bit confused. So you're salvaging some bricks to use here in your full-scale replacement?
No. To stockpile.
But so just to maintain, or where would you envision?
For maintenance, for future maintenance.
So you'll redo the whole street with Black Locust now,
yes,
but you may replace the new Black Locust with old brick in the future if needed?
You're not gonna find any product quickly if there's repairs needed. So you have to have a stockpile.
Like a temporary fix of something in addition to the 20%.
Yes. Yeah, and then we'd have a 20% stockpile of Black Locust. We would originally try to get the repairs material from. That's one of the big problems we have in our streetscape projects all over the city. DOS has to maintain these things, and there's a different architect on every one of them, and they choose all different materials, and there is no way that we can possibly keep up with fixing these things. And it's been something that has been an issue for us and for DOS for as long as the 15 years I've been here. And it's not getting any better. I don't know what the answer is, but streetscape is being pushed, of course, a lot by planning department and society in general. And so we've tried to come up with some standards for streetscape and tried to deal with it, like for instance, use one type of color for crosswalks, stamp crosswalks and things like that, rather than 10 different colors. Because a utility company, the day after we put it in, comes ripping right through it. And then we go, where's the materials? Don't know. We'll have to find them. And then it sits there for 3 months waiting for materials with a patch. So we've got this issue. So that's why we proposed the 20% stockpile, and even stockpile more, whatever we can. We've got space in the division of bridges and docks over there on Quincy area.
And so will there be a recommendation too for, a regular schedule of inspecting the wood block bricks at regular intervals? Understood that can just be a recommendation, but will that be kind of a part of this project as well, that this is the maintenance schedule, we need to revisit it every, whatever it is, whatever is recommended to replace?
We can certainly recommend it to DOS, whether they listen or not.
Understood. And we have a lot of great advocates in this area that will be calling if things
Okay.
are needed. But, and then just to echo Mr. Strickland's comments, I think core sampling makes a lot of sense here to ensure that the drainage you're trying to, move forward will work. And also appreciate the note regarding the strength of Black Locust, because that's been an issue in this area too, with the turns from the road and also the turns from the curb cut behind the multi-unit building. Are you really confident in the Black Locust, even at those turning locations? Or did you study whether any material, not that I would ever advocate that it not be wood in any section, but just understanding what the traffic is in that area, whether at either of those turn locations, any kind of different intervention makes sense or would help just make sure that this is a good long-standing solution?
I don't feel that there's any wood that would be better solution than this.
I agree with that.
You could use regular bricks, but the strength of the pavement is in the concrete below. This is really a decorative layer.
Yeah.
And as long as it's grouted, these are grouted in, and the strength of the pavement is there, and these things are held in place with grout. As you know, grout is what we use in the bathroom for our tiles. So that should hold it together pretty good.
Okay.
I'm confident.
Okay.
As confident as I can be.
Sure. Well, again, just wanted to say thanks again for the great work, and we're really looking forward to seeing this street restored.
Thank you for those questions. And Mr. Benazzi, you had questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'm going to start with it's like great due diligence of so many different options about, looking at options to repair the street. And obviously we want to stay from treated wood as it's highly toxic when it's a very bad material. I was going to be a chemical engineer.
We looked at and we decided that we didn't think that was great for a residential neighborhood, but that's what they used to use.
So, but my one concern though is that as I was looking up this product and I was trying to look up more of these products, is that they don't come like as we think of like a brick that you can kind of change the pattern. Every manufacturer so far that I've seen has them adhered to like a 1/4 inch sort of like carbon steel mesh. So they come as like big panels of pattern.
Right, that's how this comes, and we have to cut it. We have to cut that mesh. And
I was wondering if you had contacted the manufacturer about like, can we get them not adhered to the mesh? Like, can you just send us the, plain brick pavers or wood brick pavers?
We contacted another manufacturer who would custom make those, and it was actually more expensive to do that.
Versus the labor cost of just kind of like cutting them out of that.
Yeah, just taking a razor knife and cutting that little piece.
That was my one concern. I have seen this wood system before, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I'm excited, that you found the solution to it. And as to the hardness of it, it's very comparable to iPay wood, which watching my uncle's deck get built out of iPay wood, it was amazing to watch the contractors have to change their saw blades, their diamond saw blades, at least once a day, because of just how hard that these types of woods can be. So I have no doubt in my mind about the longevity of this intervention for the road. It kind of amazes me that wood can be that hard, that you need diamonds to cut it. So,
there's fence posts at the Liberty Belt in Philadelphia that are made out of black locust, and they've been there 100 years.
Yeah. They were traditionally used for fencing posts, and traditional.
Because it doesn't rot, it doesn't. But to keep to the matter of time, I think we've been going around these wood blocks. So my one concern was just getting this pattern. But if you're confident that you can rearrange the blocks to get this pattern, then I am all for this intervention. So that's my only comment, Madam Chair. And thank you again for your great due diligence.
Thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. I think Ms. Bailey then is next.
Madam Chair, is there anyone else that has comments, before me? Because mine is a technical question for the commission.
All right, there is one hand up from Ms. Kroger.
Unmute. Having trouble. Yes. Yes. My name is Janice Cogger. I'm a 34-year resident of Hessler Road. And I want to thank Mr. Keel. You did an amazing job. But we only saw it yesterday. So it's hard to respond. We are more than thankful for the efforts that were made this summer to repair the brick street, and even the temporary repairs on the wood brick street are a real relief with winter approaching and worrying about tires going over the bricks that were just everywhere. There are some other considerations, though, just off the top of my head, and we want to look at this and consider how it affects our National Register standing. But there are some other considerations I think that the Landmarks Commission needs to be aware of. Actually, the wood brick street held up well until two things. Abutting property owners started using river rocks for landscaping without putting any kind of lip on to keep the river rocks within their area of their yards. And in fact, the river rocks constantly migrate onto the sidewalks and into the road. And a lot of the damage has occurred since the beginning of the use of the river rocks, because cars driving over the river rocks is part of what has led to the river rocks then go into the wood surface and has led to the deterioration of the wood brick street. And in terms of Ms. Yablonsky's question, part of the damage behind the multi-unit building, the townhouses, was that was always a gravel lot. And the gravel too would migrate out into the road. And it was that constant wear over the rocks and over the gravel that has caused a lot of the deterioration on the street that needs to be considered. Because if we just replace things, but then leave that problem there, it's likely to result in future problems. Another is that there are multiple things being discussed that could happen on Hessler this summer, and we need to take a look at how we maintain accessibility for those who live on the street. But I thank Mr. Keel for all his work. It was really an amazing analysis. And we look forward to working with the Landmarks Commission and with UCI to ensure that this project can move forward.
Thank you for that feedback. Ms. Bailey, do you want to proceed with your technical questions?
Oh, yes. I wasn't sure how this is going to work. Since taking any action, normally I will excuse myself. So this is a report. So that's why I'm not making any comments. So I wasn't sure how this works.
I will let Mr. Roberts respond to that one.
Madam Chair, I'm afraid I do not know what Commissioner Bailey's reluctance is or her potential conflict, but she's not prohibited from making a comment to a report since there is no action being taken. If she has a conflict of interest, that could be presented at a different date, but I don't have any background information on this.
Well, I'll just not make no comments, but I do have a conflict. So, but I'll just choose not to make no comment, but thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bailey. I think, I'm going to insert my comments, and I see a hand, Laura C, that we can go to next. I mean, I think this is I think it's been echo much of what has been said. I think you've done a thorough investigation and tried to work with the neighborhood to establish, this assets to not only the neighborhood, to Cleveland. So thank you for all of the due diligence and trying to find the right product. Look forward to it being installed, whether it's in the spring or the summer. I think, it is wonderful that, we've done the correct due diligence in looking for the correct products for this. And no product is perfect, and, no products now aren't what they were in the past. So, based on the feedback from the neighborhood, I think it's really, working with the what the city can control within the road, and then working with your neighbors to control what is out of the control of the cities. If that's river rock or gravel, we look forward to your, neighborhood group, which seems to be so strong, really taking the reins on those things that are beyond the city's control. So it's a great partnership to take this new, work that will be done here shortly and maintain it for the next 100 years. Laura C., do you have any remaining comments?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting us to the meeting today. It's nice to be able to comment here. And thank you, Mr. Keel, for all your work. I know I got a chance to meet some of the workers from Capital Projects when they were out and discuss some of our concerns, and they were just lovely to talk to. Just for everyone's information, the road actually was completely redone in 1986, during which time they put a large concrete base under it and pitched the concrete base so that it drained to the sides, to the curbs. The bricks, the wood bricks, actually currently float in only really one location around the sewer system, the drainage system at the southeast corner of the road, where trucks drive up and over the corner to make that corner from Hessler Road onto Hessler Court. And I would second Mr. Strickland's comments about really studying the drainage here on Hessler. We have a drainage problem overall, both on the woodblock court and the brick road. So I think it's going to be really prudent to make sure that the drainage is looked at very closely before you proceed with anything. I'm going to encourage you to come out and visit with us too. This is like Janice said, we just got a hold of the just 2 days ago, we were told about the meeting and the report, and I was able to print it out and take a look at it. I think that it is extensive and lovely. I like the idea of Black Locust. I know that's worked for other cities. I also think we should take a close look at how Philadelphia and Rosslyn Court in Pittsburgh are maintaining their woodblock roads, because like Janice said, the woodblocks actually held up really well, a good 35 years until these recent changes. And I think especially the southeast corner being compromised with the curb the historic curbs being crushed up by the truck traffic there. I also was told by my neighbors
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Can I comment on what you said?
Sure.
Okay, the catch basin is there because it's the low point of the road. And so the floating is going to occur mostly at the low point. And as you get higher and higher, it's going to be less and less. So yeah, I agree with that. One of the problems I see, and what I didn't mention, was that we were going to probably drill holes in the cast iron casting around the catch basin so the water could get in.
Okay.
The way I see it is that water has to build up and flow over the catch basin to get into the catch basin.
Yes.
Instead of actually flowing into the catch basin from where the water level actually is, which is, below the top of the wood blocks. So that's something we want to do to try to alleviate that issue as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I think any extensive, any drainage studies you can do on the court and around the historic district would probably really benefit us. I also know that this is a nationally registered historic landmark, so I'm wondering to what extent we can work with the National Park Service and the Cleveland Landmarks Commission to protect this. And see if we can get some kind of cultural resources management plan in place. And I'm going to encourage that this restoration be done to be visibly the same and have minimal material removed, although I understand you've already addressed the limitations of that. But those are my comments for now. And I think strong community participation is going to be important here, because we've cared for this district for so long. And I actually have a neighbor who I spoke with last night about this, who walks this court several times a day for the past 10 years, because he lives at the end of the court and he works at an institution at the Cleveland Institute of Music. So he's intimate with the court and will regularly walk by and push blocks that get dislodged back in place, and he's sort of the steward of the court. So I would really hope to be able to include more of the residents and yeah, as we move forward. So thank you very much for your time.
But I would like to say that the existing creosoted softwood was not a good choice to begin with, and the black locust will be a vast improvement. And so therefore salvaging the old and using it is not a good solution to me.
You know, one of the things that will increase the lifespan of the road is making sure that the court has some protective measures in place. And I know in other cities, they restrict certain kinds of traffic on the roads. At one time, we had our ambassador of Hessler, her name was Donna Pratt. Some of you knew her as Pitter Pratt. She would literally throw herself in front of salt trucks and insist that they did not salt that road. And so, you know, that I think there are things that it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we protect the National Registered Historic Landmark and put certain measures in place like that to protect it, like other cities do.
Will there be minutes to this meeting? Are there minutes to this meeting?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Pettit.
Yes, we will draft the minutes as soon as we can.
Okay. What I want to do is I want to give make sure that Department of Streets, Department of Public Works has these minutes as well as our report.
Good. This was put on the agenda today as a report, mostly because we just saw this, a week or so ago ourselves. I think it's a great plan. I commend your department for taking on this really important historic resource in the city of Cleveland. So we're not going to take any action today, but I do think it's appropriate for us, and I think you've heard it all the testimony today, to make it clear to your division and the city administration that we care about this street. I think we support the work you've done to explore the options and as well as the preferred option. We just want to make sure you convey that to your superiors as the funding becomes available, as this project becomes more of a reality next year. And I think our expectation is that this would come back to the commission next year once we have a firmer, more solid project in place. Does that sound good to you, Frank?
Sure. Like I say, I really, we are a consultant to the Department of Streets. So what I need to do is make sure that they understand all of what you guys are looking at, and the residents as well. The
last thing I want to bring up is that the last time the street was replaced, some of the wood blocks were salvaged at the request of the neighborhood association, and they used them as fundraising tools. And I just wondered if that could be an option again this time around.
I suppose it could be. We can talk about that, but like I said, we were going to buy probably 20% extra material for repairs in the future, and so maybe that we could just get rid of all the decent remaining creosoted pine blocks.
And I'm just assuming that they would want them. I don't know that for a fact yet, but that might be an option to consider next year.
Could look at that for
Right.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. The ones that may not be appropriate for reinstallation would be probably appropriate for fundraising. There's obviously all of that, opportunity too. So I wanted to thank you for such a thorough report, and thank you for everyone's comments and questions related to this project. And we look forward to this moving forward with the full support of the Landmarks Commission.
Okay, thank you. We'll let you know if the new administration approves the money.
All right. So thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That concludes our reports for today. We'll move on to the Landmarks nominations. We'll begin with the Erie Tower and Galleria nomination. Mr. Brunges or Mr. Pettit, will you be presenting this for us today? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. I never say your last name. I'm sorry. Joe.
Marty. Yep.
Thank you. Welcome. Please, you can tell us about your project.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Pettit. I've had several conversations with Mr. Pettit over the course of the year, and most recently with Mr. Pettit and the city. What we're looking for is a nomination of not only the Erie View Tower, but the Galleria as well, which is physically attached to the building. Next slide. What you're looking at here is just a contextual map of the site. Building is bound by East 12th on the east side, East 9th Street on the west, St. Clair Avenue to the south, and to the north, it's 45 Erie View Plaza, which was just awarded state tax credits approximately 2 days ago. But we are located within the Erie View Historic District as well. Next slide. So here's just some basic facts about the tower. Most interestingly, this was the original building that was constructed as part of IMPA's master plan for the district. Building was constructed in 1964. It is listed both individually and within the historic district for Erie View. It's a 40-story structure. The top 2 floors are actually mechanical penthouses. 38th floor was actually a restaurant at one point, top of the town, which was run by Stouffer's, a Cleveland-based company. The image to the right, you can see the original construction from circa 1965. Immediately to the west of the tower, which is what you're looking at, is that open area. That's occupied by the Galleria, as the original concept and idea to have a plaza with a reflecting pool. Next slide. These are just some simple renderings that were produced by IMPA's office as part of the master planning. And as you can kind of see that the tower and the plaza were pretty closely matched. The original architect was Harrison Abramovich, pardon the butchering the last firm, but they were a New York-based firm. Tower was constructed by Turner Construction, again, back in 1964. Next slide. And as part of the district and the local the federal designation, the Galleria is included as part of the building. It's considered an integral piece of the architecture. It was built in 1987 by the Jacobs Group as an indoor shopping mall. This took place of the historic reflecting pool. Next slide. And this is just a map of the Erie View Historic District with the building highlighted. Next slide. The current status of the building is, including the Galleria, we're roughly 69 to 70% vacant right now. So it's a highly underutilized structure. We have previously been awarded federal historic tax credits. We have an approved Part 2 submission. This is actually an award winner in round 24, not 27, which was completed the other day. So we do have a $5 million state tax credit tied to the building and the gallery as well. We've also submitted this as part of the transformative mixed-use development application that was submitted back in November. So we're just waiting on the status of the award announcement. Again, the building is listed nationally, both individually and within the district. So all work that we're going to do will comply with all the requirements associated by the Secretary of Interior Standards, along with working with the local Ohio SHPO office and the Ohio Department of Development. This is going to be a multi-phase project, and I want to be clear about this. We're just looking for local nomination right now, but we do plan on bringing this back, pending the listing as a formal review of the scope of work on the interior and exterior. But we will be undergoing a change of use with the building. It's going to be a combination of residential, hospitality, reinstituting the restaurant on the 38th floor, along with maintaining the occupancy for the businesses throughout the building. Next slide. This is just our phasing plan. It's going to be phase 1, phase 2 of the entire development. Next slide. This is just our basic stacking plan as it stands right now. So the basement of the tower is going to incorporate parking spaces. We're roughly looking at, depending on, back of house requirements for the hotel, we're looking between 50 to 100 spaces. We're going to redevelop the first floor lobby. Support space is going to be maintained on the second floor. Commercial occupancy on the third floor, amenity deck potentially for the fourth floor. Hospitality is going to take up floors 5 through 12, and that'll be part of phase 1B. Offices will be maintained on 13 through 15. 16th floor will be maintained as a mechanical support area. The first phase that we're looking to undertake is the residential on 17 through 28. Offices maintained on floors 29 through 37, bringing back the restaurant to 38 and support spaces on 39 and 40. And we're potentially looking at doing a rooftop bar with the existing mechanical penthouse. Next slide. This is just a color-coded diagram of where we're at currently, working with the Marriott, who will be the hotel flag, along with the residential component and the office component. I think it was recently announced that the W was going to be undertaking the hospitality component. So this will be the first W branded hotel in the state of Ohio. So we feel like it's a very important project for not only the city of Cleveland, but for the state as well. The W was considered one of the luxury brands from the Marriott flag. Additionally, we're going through, multiple reviews and, strategies to address not just the hospitality component, the residential component, but also the redevelopment of the Galleria. So it is a pretty intense exercise that we're going through just to ensure that all parties are, fully aware of what the program is. And we're really trying to revitalize not only the tower, but the Galleria. Next slide. This is the fourth floor amenity area split between the hotel and the residential. Next slide. This is a typical floor plan for the hospitality component. We're looking at roughly 250 keys for the W. Next slide. Typical floor plan for the residential, which will be what we're calling phase 1A for the project. We're looking at roughly 227 units right now on floors 17 through 28. Next slide. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We'll then open up the floor to questions and comments from the commission.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Questions or comments from the commission?
I have some questions.
Go ahead,
ahead.
Giancarlo.
I don't know how to open up this. Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
May I go ahead with some questions?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Couple of things. One is that my company was involved with the construction of that project with the Jacobs Group and the architects and Turner Construction. And the arch that we designed is the only floating granite arch in North America. Well, that might be a consideration as far as historical evaluation.
So the gallery is listed as part of the tower, so it is considered a historic structure.
Right. There's also some interesting features, the way the Galleria is attached to the building with the underground parking. So it has an amazing architectural value, I think, that should help in having an historical evaluation. That's all. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and
Thank you,
we're planning
Giancarlo.
on maintaining, there are 450 parking spaces below grade under the Galleria. So those will be maintained. You know, we think that's a, key attribute for the tower itself, along with the gallery and the surrounding businesses.
Just for curiosity, what phase would the Galleria renovation be?
So that's really looked at as phase 2. We're looking at a whole host of things, but one of the concepts is, with the W brand, it's a very, there's very meticulous ideas about how we should be handling this, and it's considered as a extension of the brand. So we're going to have food and entertainment options within the Galleria. We're still in the initial phases of planning the Galleria, but it's going to encompass the entire Galleria itself. I'm not sure if anybody's been in the Galleria lately, but it's pretty desolate right now, to be honest. The largest tenant right now is the YMCA, which is kind of in the corner off of St. Clair. But it'll be part of phase 2.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Berardi. Ms. Bailey? Questions or comments?
Yes. I'm not familiar with the previous use of the Erie tower, whether it was 100% office use, but I want to commend the current owner of it, converting it to combination of office and residential to bring that combination. I heard you made a comment that which is to me is pretty high up, but I see why you did it, so you can have a view of downtown of Cleveland. The restaurant being at such a high level, you made a comment that it was previously was a restaurant up there. So I really like the concept that you're doing. So now my question is, I'm assuming there's going to be a private access to that restaurant. What's the use of the gallery? I mean, I'm familiar, everyone on the commission know what the gallery what used to be. What is it going to be now? I didn't hear most of. I had computer problem. I was listening on my phone, but I was trying to get back on my computer. Shut off on me.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. To address your first comment, the Erie View Tower was originally constructed as an office building, so it was, largely blank floors, and it was just kind of built to suit the various tenants that would be taking over. So, it was traditionally and historically a office building, so we're converting it to a mixed-use structure. With regard to the 38th floor, yes, that was historically a restaurant, top of the town, run by Stofers. And then I think the question regarding the gallery is, we're looking at it as a kind of a entertainment venue, sort of looking at food options, entertainment options. You know, there's a existing tenant there, the YMCA, so you know they'll be maintained. But you know, we're trying to look at a whole host of things, working with the Marriott, and you know, looking at options with the planners, you know, along with ourselves. So you know, it's a pretty intense process that we're going through to be very strategic about how to reposition not only the tower but the Galleria for the benefit of the residents, the hotel guests, you know, the building occupants that you know currently occupy office spaces, but you know, largely the surrounding area. Because I think one of the things that we've seen is you know there's a lack of food options in the area, and you know, we really want to address you know this as a you know very vibrant and you know entertaining space that you know people will look at as a destination.
Not to tell you what to do, but one thing that was down in the Galleria, there were retail stores there as well as food court there too. So you know, that was a nice place to draw visitors down into the Galleria as well. So I really like your idea of the misuse in this area tower. So thank you for the information.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Are there questions or comments from the commission? I'll insert mine now. I think this is, you know, a great project. This building has been underused for many years. Both structures have been, and it really is in need for the revitalization. I think the restaurant comments and the mixed use related to retail could really, you know, help rebuild this area because it is pretty sparse down here. So I support the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonazzi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo those sentiments that this is truly one of my favorite towers, probably because I wear black all the time, so I do like, you know, dramatic things. But no, it's a very exciting project to hear, and to hear that someone as prestigious as the W luxury brand wants to move into Cleveland should be a testament to what it means for us as Cleveland to be growing, because we would be the only 8th city in all of the United States to have one of these hotels. So I'm admittedly biased because my boyfriend works for the Ritz-Carlton, but they're very, 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 very picky when it comes to choosing places to set up their brand locations. And I think it's exciting to hear that Cleveland is growing, and I think people are recognizing that. So I know that's not related to you in presenting this, but I think just as a commission, I think we should be proud to see our city growing. But yes, I'm in support of the project, so thank you.
I'm going to ask for Mr. Pettit or Mr. Brunges to remind me the exact language. We're making a motion. Are we moving forward with motions at this time related to the nominations, or was this just for information only?
Madam Chair, this is on the agenda for nominations, so the appropriate motion would be to nominate the building as Cleveland Landmark. We still have to seek the consent of the councilman, but pending that, we expect to draft legislation early next year to designate it. So the motion is to nominate as a Cleveland Landmark.
Okay, would someone like to make the motion to nominate this as a Cleveland Landmark? Mr. Bonazzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I put forward the motion to nominate the project as presented as a Cleveland Landmark.
Thank you. Thank you, Giancarlo, for the second. Any further discussion?
Yes, is it both for the Erie View Tower and the Galleria?
Correct, yes.
Yes.
Any additional questions? Okay, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonazzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
The motion to nominate passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berardi. We look forward to seeing this back in the future to continue the process.
I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
We'll move on to our next applicant for Landmarks nomination, located at 524 Father Rosati Avenue, the Battery Park Powerhouse.
Hi, Julie. This is Rachel Ronick. I only can join for a short while. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Edgewater Hill Block Club, and I have my fellow co-chair, Sue Clements, here as well. So she's going to take over. I'm actually in a work meeting, and I stepped out. So I'd like to just read my statement in a letter that we've gotten from Energizer Battery, and then I will let Sue walk through the rest of the slides and really hope that the committee is as supportive as you were on the last project in nominating this one. So from my own thoughts and perspectives and moving into the community, the iconic Powerhouse Tower Battery Park is a beacon of innovation and reinvention for the Cleveland Edgewater communities, as well as the history of the battery. Dating as far back as 1882, this building has played a role in advancing our community. The Edgewater Hill Block Club would like to ensure it remains a landmark for future generations to appreciate, whether they're as a patron of terrestrial brewery or a resident of Battery Park. We obtained a letter from the VP of Research and Development at Energizer Holdings documenting the impact this location has had on the manufacturing history of the battery. It's been the site of the first dry cell battery, the radio battery to support the war efforts, the first hearing aid battery, and it's the location where they made all the tooling to do global production of batteries. Today, it's a first for luxury residential community in Gordon Square in Edgewater, as well as a brewery. So we ask you for your help in preserving this landmark so future generations can appreciate the hard work and creativity that has inspired Edgewater Hill for so long. So that was my personal one. And to further document the battery history, this is from Ravi Sagar. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. As I said, he's the VP of Global Research and Development with Energizer Holdings. So pardon me as I read this. Inventing, developing, and producing batteries, flashlights, and other devices from 1925 until 1997, the Edgewater Plant and Technology Center on the west side of Cleveland represents a unique place in American productivity and industry. On June 1st, 1924, after acquiring the American Ever-Ready Company, the National Carbon Company, a division of Union Carbide, purchased the Edgewater building and reconfigured it to produce layer-built batteries, which were developed to satisfy a growing demand for more compact B batteries used in radios. Production began in 1925 and 1926. The plant was in full operation. At the same time, National Carbide's Central Research laboratories were transferred from Long Island to Edgewater. In 1930, driven by the Great Depression, other factories operated by National Carbon were closed and operations consolidated at the Edgewater facility. The manufacturing of flashlights was brought from the Newark, New Jersey to Edgewater facility in 1931. And in 1932, all the radio and flashlight battery production was transferred from San Francisco to Edgewater. So by 1939, domestic battery demand boomed and driven by the need for the 1.4 low-volt radio tube portable radio sets developed for the Min-Max battery. From 1939 to 45, it was dedicated to supporting the World War II effort, and the staff rallied behind the armed forces. The battery for the VT fuse was first made here, and millions of cells for this purpose, for mine detectors, SOS signals, were all made at Edgewater. Flashlight production was suspended, but by 1945, battery production exceeded 500 million cells. As the world's oldest and largest commercial manufacturer of dry cells, National Carbon Company was instrumental in developing equipment and processes that enabled the mass production of batteries. Processes developed at Edgewater spread across the globe and enabled production of almost 6 billion cells from 1925 to 1949. In addition, several breakthrough technologies were the home of these inventions. The first depolarized hearing aid battery in 1947, the first rectangular 9-volt carbon zinc battery in 1956, and the first cylindrical alkaline manganese dioxide battery in 1958, among many other inventions. At its peak, this plant employed more than 3,500 workers and contained more than 450,000 square feet of workspace, where more than 150 different battery types have been produced. The closing of the production was announced in 1977, but it continued operations through 1997. Since that time, the division of Union Carbide is a part of Energizer Holdings, and the heritage of the innovation and invention continues at their global research development headquarters now in Westlake, Ohio, not far from the former Edgewater plant. So the Energizer Corporation helped us in documenting all of that. And I apologize for my speed reading as I have to rush to my other meeting. But I hope that the rest of the slides and Sue's commentary help show that it's been a treasure of a landmark, and I'd like to make sure it stays in that Cleveland skyline for a long time to come.
Thank you. Thank you for that comments. And we did receive the letter. I didn't want to try to, cut you off in the middle, but we do have it. So thank you for that review. But we look forward to, hearing from your colleague now about the building in addition to what you just read.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Sue Clement. As Rachel said, I'm the co-chair of the Edgewater Hill Block Club. And so much of the history that is now up on the presentation, I think, was covered in the letter. So if you don't mind just kind of slowly scrolling through the slides for me, a lot of why we think this is a really good location for this historic designation is because it really is a feature on the skyline, right just south of Edgewater Park. So if you're not quite sure where this location is, it's between West 73rd and West 76th, just south of the railroad tracks, which is just south of Edgewater Metro Park. Do you mind advancing the slides for me, please?
Madam Chair, this is actually staff's presentation, Ms. Clement, and I appreciate your input here, but
sure,
we're going to be the ones to do this presentation.
Oh, understood. No, I will step back.
I thank you for your enthusiasm.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of hours that went into the researching of this, so
yes, absolutely.
I have additional information beyond what's here on
All right,
the presentation.
Great. Sorry about that, and
that's okay. That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brunges. Please continue.
So this starts off earlier than what we have. It starts with the Standard Tool Company, which was established in 1882, and it's right down the street from City Hall here at 6th and Rockwell. They expanded and created a new factory out on Central Avenue near the railroad tracks, which was constructed in 1889. During the 1890s, they developed a new electric welding standard, which allowed for more seamless tubing, which was used for bicycles and all sorts of different parts. They made twist drills, sockets, reamers, other special tools and machinery through their period. And then during this time period with that electric welding, which was a new technology, they were actually issued they came up with this and they applied for a patent and created the Standard Welding Company out of that company, so they would have their own division and company. So they received that patent for forming the steel for the pipes and the bicycle frames. And this is the earliest commercial electric resistance welded steel pipe product in, I believe, the world. And by 1902, they were the only company producing seamless steel rims for automobiles. And it's important because Cleveland at this time, at the beginning of the 20th century, was actually the center of the auto industry before Detroit. And even though they had before it became Motor City, there were so many different car companies here. So the Powerhouse, after they expanded and became much larger, this site was purchased in 1907, and the new plant was opened in 1908. So that's when this Powerhouse dates to. Designed by the Corlett Engineering Company, and they had a railroad track that would run right up to the plant. It grew quickly. With the wheels that they were doing, then they opened up a Chicago plant, and it kept going. And you would see by 1912, they were the largest producer of auto rims, almost having a monopoly on auto rims in the country. And I think they had about 85% market share. And you can see the Cleveland companies that are here, the White, Peerless, Winton, Stearns, Baker. Those are all the ones that they were doing these rims for. And in 1914 for Ford. So here you can see a couple of the advertisements, or you can see a Cleveland landmark in the back of the Peerless. And you see their original Standard Welding Company in 1908 building was out by the Standard Tool Company. And then you can see the growth over time. And by 1916, they were a very large company. A couple of their advertisements here. So in 1912, in 1916, there becomes a bit of a problem with a patent infringement, according to Louis Pearlman. The way tires used to run was that you would have the wheel and the tire all as one part. And whether the rim was good or bad, but your tire went, you would have to replace the whole thing. This became the modern rim and a separate tire, which we now have the rubber tires. So it was during this period that they became two separate items. And Pearlman had this filed in 1906 and was granted in 1913, but the Standard Welding Company had already been making rims like this in 1912. So now you had this infringement, and I'm not going to go into the long history going, some of these cases wound up all the way at the Supreme Court. And maybe our lawyers on the board can explain what the Pearlman exception was, that it was eventually put into the Supreme Court, but that's all there. So there's a lot to go. So there was an injunction placed on prohibiting them making these rims, but they could make rims under other patents. The Pearlman Rim Company was formed in 1916, and the president of the Perfection Spring Company was announced as the vice president. So this all comes together because that's important, because then there was a merger. The Standard Welding Company merged with the Perfection Spring Company and became the Standard Parts Company. So you had the largest maker of auto springs in the world, one of the largest producers of auto rims, and all these different parts together. So because they had that relationship, the Pearlman issues were resolved, and then more growth happened as the new Standard Parts Company actually started acquiring all these other companies to go along with them. In 1920, they wanted to refinance because they had all these notes coming back that they had to pay off all their creditors. And Pearlman and three others, the Prossers, sued, say, no, we're not going to do that, and which caused a problem because now all the creditors wanted their money. So they were placed into receivership, and then they were forced into liquidation. So they started having to pay off all their debts. So all the properties started being sold off, and this Edgewater plant was the last property to be sold. And it was purchased by the National Carbon Division of Union Carbide. So I have to take a quick step back now. So the National Carbon Company, which was established in 1881 and reorganized in 1886 as the National Carbon Company, They were the people who were responsible for the first dry cell battery. And that's an example of it there. And this was done out in Lakewood on Madison Avenue at their old production facility. And they were the first company to manufacture and distribute sealed dry cell batteries on a large scale. And in 1898, they developed the C and the D cell batteries, which are what we still use today. That basic concept was back then. So in 1906, they acquired a number of carbon and battery companies, including a 50% interest of the American Electrical Novelty and Manufacturing Company, who are the maker of Ever-Ready flashlights and batteries. Changed the name, and the trademark changed to Ever-Ready as we now know it. Eventually, they fully purchased it, and then 1917, National Carbon Company was purchased by the Union Carbide and Carbon Products and became the division, National Carbon Division of Union Carbide. So when they purchased the property in 1924, for the layer-built batteries, because of the rise in the popularity of radios, and also at that time, and production began in April 1925 and full operation by 26. As was mentioned already in the letter, these are all these different products where everything was consolidated here during Depression. And here's an example of one of those Mini Max batteries from about that time, because now all of your portable radio sets were starting to go. So the variable time proximity fuse, the battery that this changed things in the war, because this was now not a missile that had to actually hit a target. It could get close and then it would explode within a certain amount of area. Again, mentioned already that the battery order flashlight production was suspended, and then from 1925 to 1949, nearly 6 billion cells produced at this facility. Here's a view from the 1940s. And then the layout there eventually would become about 20 buildings on the site. Again, some of the inventions that were mentioned included the Ever-Ready alkaline battery there, that which you can knock off Robert Conrad's shoulder there if you dare. That actually had a couple of different names, but then it was finally rebranded on March 1st, 1980 as the Energizer battery. Let's see. So as mentioned, 1977, production at the plant ended. 1986, the Ever-Ready Battery Company was sold to Ralston Purina for $1.4 billion. In 1997, the operation ceased. And you can see it here. Powerhouse is there. So in 1997, they started doing brownfield remediation, and actually in 2000, they had been approved for a preliminary plan to convert the buildings to 150 to 200 apartments. Somehow that did not go through, and then by 2004, all the buildings except the Powerhouse had been demolished. And then the area is redeveloped. Currently, it is a terrestrial brewing company, which opened in 2017. And you can see from these, they've proposed some plans for expansion. They're going to be taking over the restaurant next door as well. So in the elevated deck. And then some current conditions. View from Edgewater Park. So the significance, it's interest of the development of the batteries, and it's everything that's happened there. The weld, not only that, but the tire rims and the welding, and its physical characteristics. It is a recognizable skyline feature that people see as you're driving down the shoreway. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Madam Chair. You're muted. Madam Chair, you're still muted.
Thank you. It said thank you for the presentation and the thorough. Amazing to see what it used to be just not too long ago. I will now open it up to the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey?
What's the use inside of the Powerhouse now?
Terrestrial brewing, a brewery is on one side. It had been vacant for a while, and they just recently gave plans to open up a new restaurant in the vacant side that would support also the brewery.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Bonazzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just thank you, Carl, for the amazing presentation of the history of that area. It's really, I mean, I'm sad to see the rest of the buildings go. I don't know where they went. I like your new presentation. Like in 2004, they got demolished. Like, what happened? But to still have at least this one piece of such an amazing, integral part of Cleveland's history to remain there is truly fascinating. Me being new on the commission, I'm so excited every day. I learn more and more history about this great city. So thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Mr. Pettit?
Just a note that we have a letter of support for the nomination from Council Member Jenny Spencer, and assuming that we approve it today, the legislation will be prepared early next year.
Okay, thank you for that addition. Ms. Anderson?
Regarding the demolition, I used to live in the neighborhood, and my recollection is the buildings were demolished because of environmental concerns, and the site, had to undergo an extensive remediation for those environmental issues. So that's what I know, and I will also want to thank Carl for the extensive research he did. This was a very interesting presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Carl, it's fascinating to learn about the entire history of the site. But I wanted to know if anyone knows who the actual owner of the structure is now, whether the brewery owns the structure or they just are a leaseholder, and if the owner is in support of the designation.
I believe Maroos Brothers is the owner, and they have not yet been contacted. That will be part of our process after the nomination.
Any more
Okay,
questions,
thank you.
Mr. Strickland?
Mhm.
Okay. Ms. Ms. Clement, you are.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure you called on me again. So just to kind of give you a little bit more information about the rest of the property that was demoed. Morose Brothers has built a large number of townhomes. It's called Battery Park, the neighborhood. It's the northern part of the greater Edgewater Hill neighborhood. So there are townhomes. There's the Battery Park Lofts building. It's actually in the center of the picture. And there's also not under the same owner, but there's also another apartment building called the Shoreway. So this whole area has been redeveloped, so it is a vibrant neighborhood, and that's why we do feel so strongly about preserving the Powerhouse building.
Thank you for that feedback. Any additional questions or comments?
There's no additional demolition on this property. I heard someone mention demolition.
No, that's previous. The previous why in what you see in front of you, there was demolition of buildings that surrounded the Powerhouse when they started to develop the battery park development with the townhouses that you see on the left side of the image. So I will just interject mine here. This is, I personally live in the area. This is one of my favorite buildings in the area, and is really a beacon for the West Side, especially anyone who's traveling the Shoreway. So I fully support the nomination. Any additional questions or comments, or would someone like to make a motion for nomination of this building?
I'll make a motion for the battery park Powerhouse building.
For the nomination as a landmark?
As a landmark.
So we have a motion for nomination for a landmark, the Battery Park Powerhouse. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion to nominate the Battery Park Powerhouse as a landmark.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for the second. Any further discussion?
Is it just the building itself, or is it the premise? The property along with the building.
We designate the parcel. Whatever the existing parcel is, we will put that in the legislation.
Any further discussion?
The rest of the area has been redeveloped into Battery Park.
Correct. Any further questions or comments? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik, Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion to nominate passes unanimously.
Excellent. Very exciting to get all these nominations in. That's excellent. So that concludes our nomination, landmark nominations, administrative reports. Do we have any today?
Just a reminder for those who can make it, we have a site visit scheduled for Tuesday at 1:30 to the house at 1970 East 123rd Street. We'll be seeing that demolition next year. We'll be seeing a lot of things next year. Our December 23rd meeting is canceled. Just want to thank you all for a great year and helping us through a very challenging year. And I hope to see you all next year.
Excellent.
You're welcome, Don.
Good. And thank you, Carl and Don, for all of your hard work to keep us and get us even more organized for these meetings and keeping things flowing, and especially some of the comments in the chats to keep us moving along. So your work has not gone unnoticed. You work your butts off for every meeting. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Carl.
Happy holidays.
All right. I hope
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
And we'll see everyone in the new year. Don, what's the date of our next meeting, or Carl? What's the,
It's
when do we reconvene?
January 13th.
January 13th. All right, everybody mark your
Happy
calendars.
holidays. See you next year.
See you then. Take care.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Bye-bye.
holidays.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.